Making bread often calls for a yeast sponge, which is basically mixing the wet ingredients plus yeast into a bit of flour. This feeds the yeast and gives it a chance to rise up before you actually knead the dough out and put your last ingredients in it. So, in here I have milk and 2 teaspoons of yeast, and I've warmed the milk to room temperature and sprinkled the yeast over the top and mixed it in. It's been sitting for about 10 minutes and it's frothed up and gone all foamy and nice and the yeast are happy. And now I'm going to turn them into a yeast sponge. Okay, so we make a well in the centre of the flour. I've got 500 grams of flour there, and pour in the wet yeast mixture. Then mix in just enough of the flour from around the edges to make a kind of paste. You don't want it to be too wet and you don't want it to be too dry. As you can see, that's going nice and pasty now. Fantastic! So now we cover that and leave it to rise for about 20 minutes. All bread recipes apart from sourdough require a yeast mixture, and any of these can be turned into a yeast sponge, which is always beneficial to the rising of a bread. Some yeast mixtures involve water or honey. This one just happens to involve milk, but it's usually the wet ingredients that you mix with your yeast to get it started. The most important thing about it is it mustn't be too hot or too cold or you will kill your yeast. They are actually alive. They're little microorganisms and they're a bit cute really, but if you kill them then they won't rise in your bread. The yeast has sponged for 25 minutes and hopefully it is now all risen. Would you like to have a look? Look at that. A nice risen yeast sponge, and you can now mix in any other ingredients you like. So this one's going to have water and salt and sugar, and then I'm going to knead that into a nice dough with a little bit more milk.